Your destructive hobby ends today, Diana. My mother-in-law's voice boomed across the gallery, just as I raised my champagne glass for the opening night toast, her intervention brigade of family members filing through the door like they were storming a castle. The crowd of collectors, critics, and buyers turned in unison, their confusion palpable as Barbara stood there with her perfectly coiffed hair and designer suit, flanked by my husband James, his sister Patricia, and a woman I'd never seen before, tall, severe, carrying a briefcase like a weapon. What Barbara didn't know was that the hobby she'd come to destroy had just made me worth more than her precious son would ever be. Ladies and gentlemen, I continued, keeping my voice steady despite the ambush, it appears we have some late arrivals. Please continue enjoying the exhibition while I handle this family matter. The gathered crowd, art collectors from 3 countries, the critic from the Times, the woman who'd just bought 3 pieces for her museum, shifted uncomfortably but didn't disperse. New York art people lived for drama. Barbara marched forward, her heels clicking against the polished concrete like a countdown. Don't pretend this is normal, Diana. We're here for an intervention. This has gone too far. An intervention? I set down my champagne carefully. At my gallery opening? Precisely. She gestured around the space I'd spent 2 years renovating. This delusion, this waste of James's money. My money, I corrected, but she steamrolled on. This is Dr. Helen Martinez. She pulled the briefcase woman forward. A real career woman. Cardiothoracic surgeon at Mount Sinai. Someone who understands the value of contributing to society instead of playing with paint. Helen had the grace to look uncomfortable, clutching her briefcase like a shield. James stood behind his mother, his face a mixture of embarrassment and resignation I'd grown used to over our 7-year marriage. How thoughtful, I said, noting the way several collectors were now recording on their phones. James, did you know your mother was planning this? He shifted his weight, that telltale sign of his guilt. Diana, maybe we should discuss this privately. Privately? Barbara's voice rose. You've been promising to handle this privately for years. Meanwhile, she squanders your inheritance on this gallery. Actually, I pulled out my phone. Speaking of inheritance, has James mentioned why his trust fund payments stopped 6 months ago? James went pale. Barbara's perfectly painted lips pursed. What are you talking about? Oh, he didn't tell you? I smiled at Helen, who was edging toward the door. The trust administrators found some interesting discrepancies. Gambling debts, mostly. Atlantic City is lovely this time of year, isn't it, James? Diana. James stepped forward. This isn't the place. No. Your mother thought it was the perfect place for an intervention. I gestured to the walls around us. Dr. Martinez, before you accept this generous offer to replace me, you should know that James owes approximately $300,000 to some very unfriendly people. Helen's eyes widened. She took another step backward. Lies, Barbara sputtered. James would never. Check your credit card statements, Barbara. The cash advances? The second mortgage on the Hamptons house you co-signed. I watched recognition dawn on her face. He's been floating his gambling with your money for 2 years. The critic from the Times had her phone out now, clearly texting furiously. Tomorrow's art section would be interesting. Even if that were true, Patricia finally spoke up, it doesn't change the fact that you've wasted years on this ridiculous art fantasy. A throat cleared from the crowd. Vivian Chun, one of the most influential collectors in the contemporary art world, stepped forward. Excuse me, did you just call Diana's work a ridiculous fantasy? Patricia, who had no idea who she was talking to, doubled down. It's finger painting. A child could do it. The room collectively gasped. Vivian's eyebrows rose to her hairline. Finger painting, she repeated slowly. The piece I just purchased for my private collection for $200,000. That finger painting. Barbara's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. 200. James croaked out. Actually, I said, enjoying this more than I should. That's just one piece. Tonight's sales currently total. I checked my phone where my assistant had been updating the figures. 1.3 million. So far. That's impossible. Barbara shrieked. You're lying. James said you hadn't sold anything in months. James says a lot of things. I looked at my husband, who was now sweating through his expensive shirt. Like when he told me he was working late, but was actually at Foxwoods. Or when he said the bruises were from boxing at the gym. Bruises? Helen spoke for the first time, her voice sharp. What bruises? The ones from his bookie's enforcer. I rolled up my sleeve slightly, showing the faded marks. James thought if they couldn't collect from him, they'd try his wife. Turns out they're not art fans. The silence in the gallery was deafening. Even Barbara seemed struck dumb. But here's the beautiful irony, I continued, looking directly at Helen. The money James gambled away? It was supposed to be for this gallery. I funded it myself, with my inheritance from my grandmother. The one Barbara always said was worthless. Your grandmother was a secretary. Barbara finally found her voice. A secretary who bought Apple stock in 1980 and never sold. I smiled. Funny how James never mentioned that to you. Or that I paid cash for this building. Or that I've been supporting us for the last 3 years while he pretended to work at your friend's law firm. I work, James protested. Filing papers twice a week isn't work, darling. It's charity. I turned to the crowd, which had grown as people from the street wandered in to watch the show. But please don't let me stop this intervention. Dr. Martinez, would you like to continue with your presentation? I'm sure you have a PowerPoint about why you'd be a better wife. Helen clutched her briefcase tighter. This isn't. I was told you were mentally unstable. That you needed help. Oh, I probably do need help. I laughed. 7 years of marriage to a gambling addict while his mother convinced me I was worthless? Therapy twice a week, Dr. Martinez. Highly recommend it. Stop this, Barbara commanded. James is a good man. You've corrupted him with your bohemian lifestyle. Barbara. A new voice cut through her tirade. Marcus Wellington, my gallerist and one of the most powerful men in the New York art scene, stepped out from the back office. I think it's time you left. Barbara drew herself up. And who are you? The man who just sold Diana's entire Emergence series to MoMA. He smiled coldly. Also, the man who owns the building next to yours in Southampton. The one with the security cameras that caught James breaking into Diana's studio last month. James stumbled back. I wasn't. Stealing paintings to sell for gambling money? Marcus pulled out his phone, showing a video. Very clear footage. Diana didn't want to press charges. Family loyalty and all. But that can change. Patricia grabbed James's arm. Is this true? His silence was answer enough. I said quietly, the intervention is over. Helen, I'm sorry you were dragged into this. Barbara orchestrates these little dramas every few months. Last time, she brought a fertility specialist to Christmas dinner. Helen backed toward the door. I need to go. Wait, Barbara called after her. He's still better than a failed artist. Fail? Vivian Chin laughed. Diana's work will be in my museum retrospective next year. She's one of the most promising artists of her generation. Also, Marcus added, enjoying himself, she just got accepted to the Venice Biennale. Forgot to mention that, Diana? I had forgotten in the chaos. The email had come that morning, the culmination of everything I'd worked for. The Venice. Even Barbara seemed to understand what that meant. So, I addressed the room, which now included several reporters who'd materialized from nowhere, to summarize tonight's intervention. My husband is a gambling addict who stole from me. His mother attempted to pimp him out to a cardiac surgeon at my professional event, and I'm representing the United States at the most prestigious art exhibition in the world. Did I miss anything? The prenup, my lawyer said from the back of the room. I hadn't even seen her arrive. The one where James forfeits all claims to marital assets in case of gambling debts exceeding $50,000. James sank into a nearby chair. Diana, please. Oh, now you want to talk? I walked over to him, heels clicking like his mother's had. Where was this communication when you were losing our savings at poker tables? When you were letting your mother convince me to quit, to be a proper wife, to give up my hobby? I'm sick, he said quietly. The gambling, it's a sickness. I know. And I did. I've known for 2 years. I begged you to get help. Instead, you let your mother plan interventions for me. Barbara rallied for one last attack. You're throwing away a good man for paint and canvas. No, Barbara. I'm choosing myself over a man who was never good. I looked around the gallery, at my work covering the walls, at the red dots indicating sales, at the people who'd come to celebrate my art. And it was never just paint and canvas. It was my voice, my vision, my worth. Everything you tried to convince me I didn't have. The room was silent except for the sound of phones capturing every moment. James, I said finally, you have 1 week to move out. The locks will be changed Monday. Your things will be in storage, paid for 1 month. After that, it's your problem. Where will I go? He looked genuinely lost. I hear Dr. Martinez has a nice place. I turned to Barbara. though you might want to warn her about the collection calls. They start around 6 a.m. Marcus stepped forward. Diana, whenever you're ready, there are several collectors waiting to meet you. I nodded, then addressed the crowd one more time. Thank you all for coming to both my gallery opening and apparently my intervention. Please enjoy the champagne. It's excellent. I paid for it myself. The laughter that followed broke the spell. People began moving again, conversations resumed, and the evening continued. Barbara stood frozen in place as people flowed around her, a statue of thwarted ambition. This isn't over, she hissed as she passed me. Yes, Barbara, it is. I picked up my champagne glass again. It's been over since the moment you decided your son deserved better than a woman who refused to disappear into his shadow. She left, dragging James and Patricia with her. Helen had long since fled. The reporters were typing furiously. Vivian Chun was examining another painting with interest. Marcus appeared at my elbow. Well, that was exciting. Not quite the opening I planned. Are you kidding? This is better than anything I could have orchestrated. You'll be the talk of the art world for months. He grinned. Brilliant work, by the way, having your lawyer here. I had a feeling Barbara would try something. She always does at important moments. I watched through the window as they climbed into Barbara's Mercedes. I just didn't expect her to bring a replacement. The cardiac surgeon was a nice touch. Very Barbara. We stood quietly for a moment, watching the party resume around us. My art, my gallery, my life, all of it finally fully mine. You know, Marcus said thoughtfully, the Times critic is still here. She seems very interested in the story behind your Emergence series. I smiled. The story of a woman who was told she was nothing and proved she was everything? That's the one. I straightened my shoulders, raised my glass to the portrait across the room. A self-portrait painted during my darkest days, when Barbara's voice was loudest in my head, and went to tell my story. The intervention was over. My emergence had just begun.